All right, hello delegates. My name is Daniel Menz. I'm live streaming from Berlin, Germany today. We're just going to wait a few more minutes to see if any other delegates are going to join. It looks like we have a few people hopping online right now, but let's just wait a few more minutes. Um, just some basic guidelines for the webinar. It's going to be about an hour. My plan is to hopefully speak for about 40 minutes and then address any questions in the last 20 minutes of our time. At the moment, it's good to see that there's some more people online. Delegates are going to join. Looks like we have a few people hopping online right now, but let's just wait a few more minutes. Just some basic guidelines for the webinar. It's going to be about an hour. My plan is to hopefully speak for about 40 minutes and then all right, now that we have about 10 people online, I think we can get started. So I'd like to start off by introducing myself first. My name is Daniel Menz. And before we get further into the webinar, I'd like to go over some reminders from the Secretariat of HMUN India. So first, you are all reminded to read your background guides. Really good reads. The directors have put a lot of time and effort into the background guides, and they're very, very well done, and they'll give you a nice overview of what your committee is about. And if you need the password for the background guides, let me know, and I can arrange to put you in touch with the Secretariat. The second reminder is to email your directors. Your directors all have committee emails. And if you have any questions whatsoever about conference or about your committee or anything else to do with HMUN India, feel free to send your director an email. My last reminder is that update paper or position papers are due tomorrow. That's Monday, July 24th. And they need to be uploaded to Monbase by tomorrow. If you have any questions about the logistics or length or anything else related to position papers, make sure to email the Secretariat or your director. And other than that, those are my three reminders. Now that we have that through, we can start with my introduction. So my name's Daniel Menz again. I'm a sophomore at Harvard. I am a double major in government and Germanic literature and languages with a secondary focus in environmental studies. Naturally, my extracurricular or academic experience is blended into my extracurricular experience as I've been very involved in the Model UN community at Harvard, participating in a variety of conferences, and many of my committees have focused on, unsurprisingly, German studies and environmental studies. I originally come from the small town of Cape Elizabeth, which is a small town of 9,000 people in Maine, right on the coast of Maine. So my passion for the environment and for the natural world is very embedded in my identity and is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about running the United Nations Environmental Program at a variety of different Model UN conferences. This time I'll be directing the environmental program at HMUN India. And the topic will be corporate, social, and environmental responsibility. So we'll be taking a hard look at international governance regimes as they relate to the relationship between the private sector and private industries and environmental production and environmental degradation. So if any of my delegates are listening to this right now, I hope you're very excited for committee. My IDs and I have prepared a very thrilling committee that's going to be complete with a lot of interesting elements, a lot to debate, a lot of interesting crises coming your way too. So I hope you're as excited for UNEP as I am, and to the rest of the delegates, I hope you're excited for your committees as well, because we have some of the best directors from Harvard participating in this conference. So it's going to be an amazing time. A little bit more about why I'm excited about HMUN India. So this will be my first time in India, actually. However, I've been very involved in the Model UN community at Harvard, and before that in high school. I started Model UN junior year, in high school. I was a very nervous delegate. It took me a while to get going, but practice makes perfect, and I'm nowhere near perfect, but the experience has been very meaningful, meeting delegates from across the world and learning how to collaborate. And in the theme of this webinar title, Collaboration and Compromise, what really inspired me about the Model UN community, it has been my ability to interact with delegates representing different perspectives and worldviews and engaging with them in a respectful, diplomatic manner. Because at the end of the day, that's what Model UN, from my perspective and from the Harvard perspective, is all about: engaging with different perspectives in a respectful way, collaborating and compromising in an effort to peacefully and respectfully arrive at common solutions to advance the collective good. So that's why I'm excited for HMUN India. After directing at HMUN in Boston, HNMUN in Boston, HNMUN Latin America in Peru, and HMUN China in Beijing, I'm ready to come to Hyderabad and complete the circuit and really be a mentor for not just my delegates, but all other delegates that will be at conference and who are listening to this webinar right now. So to start out, before I get into the heart of the presentation and my elaboration on collaboration and compromise, I want to make clear we do have a comment section. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to type a question in the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer it as soon as possible. I like to make this as informal as possible. So if you have a question, I don't necessarily need to save it till the end. I'll just answer it when I have a second, and we'll run things like that. Okay, so to begin, I have two quotes that I found about diplomacy. The first is from Samantha Power, who was the former United States ambassador to the United Nations, and Barack Obama, our very beloved president, 44th president of the United States. So the first quote: "My style in diplomacy is my style as a human being. I'm very direct and very honest." That's from Samantha Power. So really talking about collaboration in diplomacy and really embedding that within her identity is what she's getting at in that quote, and really kind of she takes it to maybe an extreme level, sort of, by making it a part of her identity and grounding herself very well in what she believes, and then using diplomacy as a means of interacting with other belief systems. The second quote from President Obama is, "In a world of complex threats, our security and leadership depends on all elements of our power, including strong and principled diplomacy." So President Obama's quote is very determined, very confident, gives off a lot of self-confidence in his ability to know what he wants to get, but it also really underscores why diplomacy is so important, in that the world's problems today, whether it's famine, disease, war, or climate change, aren't going to be solved by bickering or fighting. They're going to be solved by diplomacy, by engaging with other opinions, by really championing your beliefs and really internalizing a collective solution that takes into account the interests of different actors within our web of global actors, and working with other people who many of whom will be on your side, and many of whom may not be, but using the peaceful diplomatic approach to arrive at that end goal is the most powerful and principled approach, according to Obama and Samantha Power. So I'd like to talk about the HMUN India philosophy for a moment and how it relates. So HMUN India may be unique from conferences that you've attended in the past. At HMUN India, and at any given Harvard Model UN conference, the emphasis is on collaboration as opposed to simply competition. So I'd like to start by defining these two terms. So first, competition. In my opinion, there's two types of competition. There's healthy competition and there's cutthroat competition. So it goes without saying that Model UN and any real debate or any real life situation in which people have different opinions and are trying to see their opinion prevail is inevitably a competitive enterprise and requires competition. So when we say we emphasize collaboration over competition, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're taking competition out of this enterprise or out of this exercise. Because at the end of the day, there is going to be some competition. But if you use the energy and the spirit of competition in a healthy way, one in which you internalize and say to yourself, okay, I do want to win. I do want to win and I want my ideas to prevail. And I'm going to try very hard to do that and make sure that my ideas prevail. But as long as you do them within the confines of our rules and expectations, and you ensure that the competition is harnessed in a very respectful manner, then you'll do just fine, and that'll produce an even better result than cutthroat competition. Like when I say cutthroat competition, I mean trying to bring someone else down, trying to impede others' progress, trying to use inappropriate methods of competition to defeat your enemies or your opponents is not what we're looking for. Instead, we're looking for a healthy competition, which requires you engaging with your enemies and your opponents. And if you disagree with them, stating that respectfully and making sure that everything is done in a diplomatic manner. So that's what I mean by when we talk about competition at HMUN India. It might be different from anything else you've experienced debating or interacting with people in your private lives. The emphasis is on healthy competition as opposed to cutthroat competition. So next, collaboration. So I found two interesting definitions of collaboration when I was preparing for this webinar. The first definition is the action of working with someone to produce something. Okay, actually, before we move on, I was asked by, there's a question in the comments section, define inappropriate negotiation. So an example of inappropriate negotiation, so I can use an example that's occurred in the past. During a moderated caucus, if you're giving a speech and if you disagree with someone's opinion, to do that in a respectful manner, you would say, I disagree with this person's position and these are the reasons I disagree. I don't think it's constructive. Like, for example, if you're talking about a policy proposal, you could say, I don't think it benefits the common good. I think the vision is a little short-sighted and it requires a little more fleshing out because there's not enough detail. And second, it doesn't make sure that our people get what we're looking for. So that would be respectful negotiation, like looking at the flaws, bringing up those flaws, and doing that in a respectful way that maintains civility. Versus inappropriate negotiation would be going after the delegate, yelling at the delegate and calling their ideas stupid. It would be telling them that their ideas are not valid, that they don't deserve to have a voice, and that their proposal is stupid. So, or yeah. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. If you have any other questions related to that, please let me know. Got an hour or two, so plenty of time to ask questions. Just whenever you want, just put a comment in the comment section and I'll take care of that as we work our way through. So next, I'd like to define collaboration. So as I said before, I found two interesting definitions of collaboration. The first definition is the action of working with someone to produce something. And the second definition, unfortunately, I found was traitorous cooperation with an enemy. So these very strikingly different definitions illustrate that there are a lot of different interpretations of just what collaboration means. It goes without saying that HMUN India will refer to the first definition of cooperation, which means the action of working with someone to produce something, as opposed to traitorous cooperation with an enemy. HMUN India obviously does not agree with that second definition, as your fellow delegates and your fellow countries and your stances, we don't, in this environment, we don't want to see them, we don't want you to see working with other people as traitorous. Model UN is a collaborative enterprise, and our goal is to foster your ability to work with other people, to work with other backgrounds. Obviously, in any given Model UN committee, there's going to be tensions between maybe 2 or 3 different countries. But in our environment, our goal is to make sure that it's all kept respectful, and it's done in a diplomatic manner, and you engage with those ideas and those people in a diplomatic manner. So it goes without saying that we're really looking to inspire the action of working with someone to produce something. Okay, I just saw in the comments section, it looks like someone had a question about taking notes. You can feel free to take notes if you'd like. This is also being recorded, so if you ever want to come back to our live stream website and watch the recording again, you can feel free to do that too. But yeah, so if you want to take notes, that's fine. And if you want to come back later to our live stream website, you'll be able to watch this recording again. Okay, so moving on. In HMUN India's view, and any Model UN conference run by Harvard, we opine that productive solutions require 2 things. First is the active and inspired interest and dedication of impacted parties. And second is the ability to work together in a cohesive and collaborative manner. So what I mean by this is everyone has a stake in the issues being argued in your committee room. I think one of the unique things about Model UN is the real life impact of what you're debating and how that can translate into your individual lives and your personal communities. So it really requires you to take on your country or your person's interests and your willingness to educate yourself and educate your peers about your backgrounds, and really use that to inspire change and to bring your best ideas to the table. On the second part, your ability to work in a cohesive and collaborative manner. So the first step, as I mentioned, is really internalizing your beliefs, value systems, and your backgrounds, and bringing that to the negotiation table. But the second step, that you're never going to be able to argue and articulate that and really advance that on a higher level if you don't collaborate in a cohesive manner once you arrive in the committee room. Whether you're in a moderated caucus or an unmoderated caucus or outside of committee, it's going to require that you internalize your belief systems and then come with a willingness to hear other people's belief systems and find common ground in that. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We all have different interests, but we do come from the same source. We're here to work together, and we do have similar interests in improving quality of life and enhancing security and really finding ways to, for the most part, work together. So I have a note in my notes that I'd like to talk about this later, actually. But there are many different variants of collaboration in a Model UN setting, as I mentioned. That could take place in a moderated caucus, an unmoderated caucus, or elsewhere. But I will talk that I'll go into specifics more later in this webinar. But to basically just, I think, sum up this first section, competition must be balanced with a willfulness or a willingness to hear other people's ideas, incorporate and synthesize ideas when necessary and where possible, and to treat your peers and opinions with the respect they deserve. So, if there's any questions after that first section on HMUN India's philosophy on competition and collaboration, feel free to send a question in the chat, and I'd be more than happy to answer that to our many viewers here this morning, or rather this afternoon. And if not, I'll move on to the next section, which is our evaluation criteria. So this next section, I will be talking about how the chairs view debate and what we're looking for in delegates. And I hope this section and all of the sections will help really give you a better idea of what we're looking for from the delegates and which delegates are going to perform best at HMUN India. And yeah, without further ado, in HMUN India's opinion, and in my opinion, the best delegates are the ones who not only compete well, but also collaborate well. So it really harnesses our central theme of competing in a healthy, respectful manner and harnessing that to really elevate your ability to compromise and collaborate. I just did get a question about will this help win an award? So yes, the answer to that would be yes, that this is what we're looking for in our delegates, and the delegates that collaborate and compete in the manner described here will be looked on very favorably and will be in contention for awards. That's really I'll get into this more in this section, but we're looking for the most respectful and the most respectful and the most able delegates who are able to lead committee and collaborate and work with other people and elevate other people's voices. And at the end of the day, if those goals and those abilities are championed and are utilized, you should be very proud of yourself and you would be in contention for awards. But again, it's based on the discretion of the directors. So I won't mention awards too much in this, but as long as you follow our expectations, you should do well in committee. Okay, so the best delegates, again, are the ones who not only compete well, but also collaborate well. I actually just got one more question, so I'll go ahead and answer it right now, just so we can address any questions you may have. So how can you be competitive and collaborative at the same time? That's a very good question. The two definitely are not mutually exclusive. I think they run in hand. I think what really comes first is your ability to really know what you believe in, know what your country believes in, and know what you want to take out of the conference. So Model UN is inherently competitive in that you want to win. You want your ideas to prevail. You want to have the best resolution. And that's okay, just as long as it's done in a diplomatic manner and it's combined with a willingness to collaborate. So really this boils down to you can be competitive and you can be competitively collaborative, if that makes sense, by being assertive, by reaching out and building bridges and building relationships with your delegate. That only serves to advance your cause, to get more people on board, and to really advance your ideas even further among your peers and in your working papers, in your draft resolutions. So Does that, if that answers your question, I hope that answers your question. But I think competitive collaboration is a very powerful tool to use in that you can use a competitive competition to advance your goals in a diplomatic and respectful manner that respects other people's ideas and debates them in a respectful and diplomatic manner, but also using collaboration to help advance your ideas. So if you could let me know, I'd appreciate it if you'd let me know if that answered your question. Otherwise, I can begin to move on. So the most critical forms of collaboration that will take place in the Model UN committee will occur while you're identifying your allies and your opponents who may disagree with you, forming your blocks, and being able to reach across the aisle to work with both your supporters and working together to develop a working paper and then a draft resolution, and then I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, but working across the aisle to work with your enemies and also being there to support your allies. So another form of negotiation takes place through note passing. So all of this usually takes place during moderated caucus when you're passing notes to gather allies and whatnot. And another form would be leaving the room to work on resolutions or speaking with one another during an unmoderated caucus. So there's really like two forms of collaboration. There will be like indirect or more direct and open collaboration in front of the entire committee when you're going to get up and give a speech, whether you're on the speakers list or whether it's during a moderated caucus. And then there will be face-to-face collaboration outside of the committee room when you're working on your draft resolution or if you're passing notes to different people to gather support for your ideas. So that's really the two ways you can divide this, is whether you're giving a speech, and the ways you can really collaborate when you're giving a speech can be mentioning your partner's work. So let's say you're the United Kingdom and you have a blocking group with Italy and Austria, and you're up there giving a speech about how about your proposal or your policy ideas. And let's say all three of you worked on different ideas and you want to mention all of them. It would be very diplomatic and very collaborative to say, so this is what the UK has contributed to the resolution. Italy has also given great input on this one subsection, and Austria has been very instrumental in proposing this idea as well. So this is all hypothetical, of course. But the point is, if you're giving a speech and you have coalition partners and you want to work together, and if you attribute credit where it's due, that's very diplomatic and very smiled upon by the chair. Yeah, so really the best delegates who will emerge are ones who will be able to identify their allies and form blocks with each other and really champion their vision and their expertise and what they are looking to get out of negotiations. At the same time, the best delegates will also be able to reach across the aisle to respectfully disagree with their opponent's ideas and also find common ground. And this will be big when you're merging working papers and merging ideas, is looking for common ground between different blocking groups and trying to get them to reconcile their differences in a respectful way, in a diplomatic way. So that takes care of kind of what the general HMUN India director is looking for, someone who stands out as a leader in identifying their allies, forming blocks, and really organizing that block. And not only being a leader within that block, but also elevating other delegates. All of the delegates here are going to come from different backgrounds and have different levels of Model UN experience. And a delegate's ability to elevate other people's voices and to be inclusive and make sure that other voices are being heard and that one person isn't talking the whole time, we're going to look very favorably upon that. So there are a lot of quotes on this, but some of the best leaders are listeners as well. Being a leader doesn't just mean you're talking all the time, you're taking control of the situation and whatnot. Of course, like that is one form of leadership, but another form of leadership is also listening, hearing out other people, and incorporating their ideas, because all delegates at this conference have wonderful ideas to contribute. No one delegate in a blocking group or a committee has all of the ideas to fix the solutions of, or fix the problems of the world. Okay, it's going to require, as I said, collaboration, to be able to listen to your fellow delegates, interact with them, and really synthesize your ideas in the effort of creating a better world for tomorrow. With that said, if there's no questions, I'd like to move on to my vision as a director. So this might be a little repetitive, but my vision personally as a director is making sure that that delegates are performing well, that they're speaking a lot, that they're very active during unmods and in promoting their ideas and working with other delegates, and that they're maintaining proper, appropriate diplomatic relations, to make sure that the delegates are making other voices heard. And really, from my perspective, the best delegates are the delegates that improve other delegates. So there's going to be a lot of beginners, maybe first timers, and delegates who haven't been to that many conferences who might need a little help on the way. If you're a delegate who's helping those other delegates advance with their speaking skills, their ability to argue certain points, their ability to contribute to a resolution, that's going to be looked upon very favorably. Yeah, so I think a couple of more points, just making sure you're always engaging and speaking consistently in a diplomatic manner, whether that's during a moderated caucus or an unmoderated caucus. And the point I'm looking for is for the delegates to be active in improving each other's ability and improving their own ability to debate and engage in diplomacy, and helping others get to that point as well. And I see we have a couple of first timers here. This is great in the comments section. We also have someone participating in their second conference. So yeah, I hope this advice is helpful. And really, it's going to take some time to adjust. During my first conference, I was very nervous as well. But I really came in with a positive attitude, looking to work with other people. And really, once you get that first speech out of the way, once you stand up there and really raise your placard as soon as possible and try to speak as close to the first position as possible. And it might not go the way you plan. It might not go perfectly, but that's okay. As long as you get up there and speak and contribute ideas and develop some momentum during those first couple of speeches, you're going to do fantastic. And you're not only going to improve your own ability at conference, but you're going to be an inspiration for other people as well, and really inspire them to speak as well. So it's really all about speaking up, about coming prepared, knowing what you want to contribute to the committee, and that'll create a reaction that will help other people want to collaborate and buy into the mission of that you're promoting or that the committee's promoting. Yeah, so to sum up, all of the values and criteria that I'm looking for and that my peers are looking for as directors at HMUN India stem from collaboration. And by collaboration, again, I mean your ability to be both a leader and a teammate. Okay, that sums up my second section on evaluations and what we're looking for from delegates. I hope everything is making sense right now. If you have any questions after this first section, please send them in the comment section, and I can answer them right now. otherwise, we can move on to my third section out of 4. Apologies for that. I just need a little water. Okay, I don't see any questions in the comment section as of yet, but if any pop up, just go ahead and send them in the comment section and I can address them. So to get more specific, this next section will deal with collaboration in action as it relates to like what does collaboration look like specifically in the committee setting. So the way I've broken this up is what collaboration looks like in the opening sessions, what it looks like in the middle sessions, and what it looks like in the closing sessions. So to begin, collaboration in action at HMUN India in the opening session. So in the opening session, it'll be used mainly as a way for you to introduce your ideas, to give a couple of speeches at the front of the room, and to find your allies. So these are the 2 big things: stating your position, listening to other people's positions, writing them down, and seeking common ground. And second, finding and identifying your allies and forming a block with them. So this is going to require a lot of attention. It's going to require that you communicate your ideas very clearly and that you listen very clearly for other people's ideas and seek them out. So this will include, like, if you hear someone with an idea that aligns with your values, you can send them a note and say, hey, let's work together and let's form a blocking group to write a resolution or a working paper together. Okay, I just saw a question that said, what criterion will we be judged on? Could you be a little more specific with that? I know I mentioned that in the last section, but is there anything specific that you're looking for? But moving on, so with the first session, really stating your position, listening to other people, and finding your allies to form a blocking group. So by the end of the first session, you should have a blocking group together with a multitude of countries, and you should be looking to collaborate with them and really develop ideas, develop a brand for your blocking group and what they're going to champion, and make sure that everyone buys into that mission and everyone is able to argue in favor of that mission throughout the next few committee sessions. That's really the extent of collaboration in the opening session. It's a pretty fast-paced session, so people are going to be giving their ideas, voting on topics, and finding allies. So really, collaboration is really essential from the get-go in identifying the people that will work well together with you, and also listening to your opponents to see what you're up against with different ideas. Okay, so I just got a question, how many countries should be in each block? That's a wonderful question. So it depends on committee size. So some committees might be 70 to 80 delegates. Some might be as large as 200. There is a nice balance between how many countries should be in your block depending on the size of the committee. So there's no set number of people that should be in your blocking group. There are also, this is an important note, there are no sponsors at HMUN India, so that will not be an inhibition to your ability to submit a working paper. Instead, we only allow signatories, which simply condones support for your working paper. So this gives you a little more flexibility in determining how many delegates should be in your block. So my recommendation, if you're in a committee with like 70 to 80 people, your blocking group should be at least a half a dozen people, maybe even upwards near like 10 to 15. But it really varies. Like there's going to be a lot of different blocking groups of different sizes. And as long as you have like a core group of, I think if you're in like a 70-person committee, like a core group of 6 to 8 people, and maybe even going up to like 10 to a dozen people would be strong. In a larger committee, I don't have as much experience in committees that go as large as 200, but I would definitely have a good number of delegates, like upwards near like 10 or 12 or maybe even 15 in your blocking group. Um, I just got another question about how many delegates are there in each committee. I'm not aware of that. So the General Assemblies tend to have upwards of over 100 delegates. Some go as high as 200 delegates. The ECOSOC committees are they are usually like 70 to 80 delegates, and then essays are somewhere between like 15 to 30 delegates. So it really depends on the size of your committee, but I really wouldn't worry too much. This would be my best advice: is don't worry too much about block size. As long as you find a core group of at least half a dozen people and start working on your ideas and really working on a good resolution, and then getting other people to buy into that resolution and bringing them into the fold and growing your blocking group over the course of the first couple of committees, you should be fine. I just got another question that said, how do you deal with a power delegate? So by a power delegate, that would probably refer to someone who's very competitive, maybe a little aggressive in really maybe shutting down other people by really like only listening to their own ideas and not really engaging with other people in a respectful manner. I think the best way to deal with a power delegate is to really be persistent with them, to be persistent with your own ideas and make sure that you get time to speak. And really, if it's a problem, if they're being disrespectful, you can come to the chair and talk to us and we can help guide the group. But really be persistent with your ideas. And if they're trying to talk over you, maybe say like, excuse me, like I need a little bit of time to talk too. Like this is a collaborative process. Like we're a committee, not just individuals who with different varying levels of power. And really just be persistent. And if there's problems, you can go talk to your chair if it's a problem within committee. But I hope that answers your questions. I'm getting more questions about how many delegates are in committees. In UNEP, there should be about 70 to 80 delegates, since it is an economic and or an ECOSOC. And the last question I got was, how do you choose a block? So the best way to choose a block is to first, during the first session, everyone will be giving speeches. So you'll be given a speech too, where you get to champion your ideas. So the best way to form a block is to really listen to your fellow delegates as they're giving their speeches and find common ground with them. So if you're the UK and you have a stance on a certain issue and France goes up and gives a speech, or let's say like Colombia goes up and gives a speech and they have similar ideas to you and similar beliefs, you'll want to work with them. So the best way to form a block with them would be to send a note to them saying, hey, let's work together. We have a lot of good ideas that we share in common, and I really like your energy, or I like the ideas you have. So let's meet outside during the first unmoderated caucus and start a blocking group. So that's really the best way to form a blocking group, is to listen to your delegates as they're explaining their ideas. Send them a note saying, let's work together. And during the first unmoderated caucus, to go find the delegates that you liked while they were giving speeches and whose ideas you liked, and say, hey, let's form a blocking group together. Let's write a working paper together since we have a lot of common ideas. So I hope that answers that question. I have another one. How do you deal with a country from the P5? So I would refer to the Power 5 countries, the countries with the most power, and because they have the most economic and political power. So in a Model UN committee, it's one vote per country. So unless you're in a in the Security Council, and in the Security Council, the P5 will, or members with a permanent seat have veto power. But outside of the Security Council, it's one vote per country. So yes, the P5 has a greater impact on economic and political will worldwide, but within this committee session, they only have one vote. So they may be able to utilize their position to gather more allies and I think maybe they'll have an easier time building blocks since they represent interests that are shared by a pretty wide array of interests or a wide array of actors. But to deal with P5 in like a normal Model UN committee, really interact with them. Like your country has the same voting power as them, so the playing field is relatively equal. Not really, like in real life, but in your Model UN committee, you'll have the opportunity to use your voice, and it might not represent as large of a pool as, say, the United States, but really be persistent and work with them too, because since they do have a lot of power, it would be handy to really find common interest with them and see where that goes. So I just got another question, or I got another statement. So in conclusion, to be a good collaborator, you have to be an open-minded delegate, yet a good communicator. So that's exactly right, and that's a really nice statement. I think it really synthesizes a lot of what I said, and that you have to come open-minded. You have to know what you believe in, but you have to be flexible too, because not everyone believes in the same thing that you believe in. So really, to get people to buy into your mission, you have to be a good communicator, as this commenter said. And you have to be willing to collaborate at the same time and come open-minded, really understand that other people come from different backgrounds and different belief systems. So I have one more question. So how does a country like Iceland, small and non-dominant, influence a committee? So again, every country in this committee has one vote. So Iceland might be at a disadvantage because it's really small. It's not very dominant compared to the United States or United Kingdom. It doesn't have the military might, and it doesn't have the economic clout that really make those countries dominant in the political and economic fabric of our global geopolitical sphere. But I mean, at the end of the day, every country has one vote. So in this case, like, it's really like might not be as much about the country as it is about the delegate and your ability to communicate your values and to be a leader. Since you're all on this similar platform, you have the same opportunity to communicate your values within our committee room at HMUN India, and just champion your values and get other people to buy into that. So it really starts with being a good communicator, trying to unify and find common interest among your allies, and keeping an eye on your opponents to see where your interests might overlap too. So I hope that answers your question. It's really like a fairly level playing field within our committee room in terms of where you're able to go. At the end of the day, it might be easier for countries like the United States to develop wider coalitions and command greater power, but that doesn't discount the ability of smaller countries to have powerful opinions and visions for the world, and to utilize them for the common good and to bring more people together. So I hope that answers your question. So moving on, so that basically covers the opening session, what we're looking for with blocking groups and finding your allies. So the middle sessions require a number of things. So during these middle sessions, you'll be developing working papers, you'll be continuing to debate new ideas that haven't been mentioned, and you'll be merging working papers into draft resolutions, and you'll be giving speeches and testing the waters with your opponents. So I broke this down into 5 different points. So the first point is how to operate within a block. So once you have your allies, once you have your block, it's going to require that you keep up collaboration beyond the simple the simple practice of forming that block. So once you're in a block, you're going to have to work together as a team. So you share common interests. You need to have an effective communication strategy to make sure that that message and your opinions are being displayed in your working papers and then draft resolutions, and that during moderated caucuses, when you're giving speeches, that those opinions and the content of your written ideas are coming out during your speeches. So it's a unified approach. Everyone has some self-interest in this, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to work together. And when you're working with your blocking group, what I would recommend is really be respectful. And this is another one of my points. Listen to your peers. So as I said earlier, everyone has good ideas, and the name of collaboration is both speaking and listening. So really taking into account what your other delegates have to offer and incorporating that in the working paper and helping everyone arrive at a common solution. So that takes care of two of my points, or actually three. So my second point was devising working papers in an inclusive approach. So I said before, as I said before, not every delegate, no one delegate has all of the answers. So it's going to require that you work together and divide up the work and really collectively contribute to your working paper. So I just got a question. When working papers are combined, what if two working papers contradict on one point and are unable to find common ground? Do we leave that point out? So that's something that's going to be needed to, that's something that you're going to need to decide between the two blocking groups. So if you have two working papers and you're looking to merge them and there's a contradictory point, you're going to need to have some debate on that. And it might come down to just leaving that point out or softening the language or really finding common ground on that single point if it becomes a problem. So that's really something that's up to the delegates between the different blocks to come up with. Yeah, so as I mentioned before during the middle session also, this is where your speeches are going to come into play in terms of attributing credit where it's due and making sure that other voices are being heard. So for instance, if you're working with, if the UK and France are working together and the UK gives a speech and tells the committee about some of their ideas and about their working paper, it would be very diplomatic and very collaborative to mention the work that France has done to aid with the process of creating that resolution. That about does it for the middle session. So it's really about devising your working paper in a respectful and inclusive manner, testing the waters with your opponents as you're going to need to merge and you're going to need to deal with different ideas. And there might be contentious points, as that one commenter pointed out, that may inhibit and prevent like harmonic collaboration from taking place. But regardless, you're going to need to try at least, because at the end of the day, you need a majority of the committee, or you're going to need a certain amount of people to vote yes on your resolution. And that's going to require some compromise and collaboration and maybe sacrificing some of your points in the interest of developing a paper that better represents the common interest of the committee as a whole. So I just got another question. What is the difference between a vote and a census? I'm not actually sure that I understand that question. What do you mean by census? Yeah, we'll come back to that question later. Yeah, so that about does it for the middle sessions. In terms of the closing sessions, this is where, like the last couple of sessions, you're going to be seeking to merge working paper, or merge your papers, and also add amendments to the draft resolutions after they're introduced and debate. There will also be, you'll be able to demonstrate your ability to share credit, and no one delegate can take credit for an entire draft resolution. So it's really about sharing your credit for the work and continue to negotiate with your peers through the amendments process and striking up agreement in that sense. So in the closing sessions, they're probably going to be the most contentious, but you need to maintain diplomacy and respect for your opponents when you're seeking to merge ideas, to synthesize ideas, and to arrive at a final solution that will be voted upon. So like a final resolution that represents the collective good, and yeah, that you'll be able to vote upon. So you, I just saw in the comment section. So the question was, what is the difference between a vote and a consensus? So consensus means general agreement among all parties present. So consensus is basically like everyone agrees on the certain point. So as opposed to, we don't require complete consensus in a Model UN committee, as not everyone's going to vote most likely on the same working paper or the same resolution. So I think that's really the difference, is that when you're voting, you don't necessarily need consensus. Consensus is a very powerful tool that can be used to build coalitions, to really cement an opinion that might be very popular. But yeah, I think that answers the question. If it doesn't, send me a message and I can elaborate a little bit more. I also have another question. Is the executive board taking note of who is actually drafting the resolutions? Since many times the person giving out the most creative points doesn't come into the limelight. We are. So from my perspective, I have my assistant directors walk around the room during unmoderated caucuses to see what's going on and who's contributing. And we do watch like who's sort of like leading the group, like who else is leading the group, who's speaking a lot, but making sure that the playing field is equal and that everyone has the same amount of speaking time, and that they're able to contribute. So we do take note, and we are pretty aggressive in terms of making sure that credit is due where credit is deserved. So that's a very good question. And it's true that some people might try to take credit for your points, but don't let that happen. Bring up in a speech, and don't attack the delegate. Never attack anyone, but bring up in a speech the ideas you've contributed and placed in that resolution, and you'll be fine. Okay, so my final section before I open it up to general questions at the end is end results. So the end results of your committee will be the passage of a resolution that has incorporated a variety of ideas through the drafting process, and through your process of negotiating with different opinions and different ideas, some of which you may agree with and some of which you might not. Another point to take away is the respect you've cultivated for the ideas that didn't make the final cut, and the respect for the people who devised them. So there are going to be people who have ideas that might not make it to the final resolution, and that's okay. Like, as long as you put in effort, as long as you are respectful and diplomatic, and as long as you hear other people out and negotiate and grapple with their ideas, then everyone wins at the end of the day. My third point is that you should seek to attain a comfort at the end of the day that a deliberative and collaborative process has resulted in a comprehensive resolution, and a majority of diplomats have achieved some of their goals and made concessions and work together to produce that common solution at the end that a majority of people support. And finally, your personal takeaway should be an enhanced understanding of how diplomacy and respectful collaboration will open the door to a better future. And this is a crucial point, and this is one of the main reasons that I participate in Model UN and that my fellow directors, and why we run the conference, is to really help you prepare for the real world, because these are real world skills that you are developing, that you'll be able to take away and apply, whether you're in a business negotiating different ideas for where to take the company, or whether you're in a town hall meeting with your representatives talking about political ideas and where you want to see your community go, or whether you're in school and you're working on a group project and you want to make sure that your voice and your fellow peers' voices are heard in a collaborative process. So with that, that's all I have for today. And that's why I think collaboration at this conference is so important, because the problems of the world aren't going to be resolved through intense competition and cutthroat competition, but rather by healthy competition that's harnessed and channeled into a willingness to collaborate. So I do have a few more questions in the comment section. So if the resolution is not passed in the committee, then does that mean you have failed as a delegate or a block? So as I mentioned earlier, no, it doesn't mean you failed. It absolutely does not mean you failed. No one's failing in this. No one gets like an A or an F in committee. This is a very like welcoming environment, and you might have an idea that doesn't gain mainstream acceptance, but as long as you really stick to your views while demonstrating a willingness to collaborate and be flexible, you'll do well. And you might not gather a majority of the votes, but from the chair's perspective, if you represent your country or your person's interests very succinctly and in a powerful manner, and you really stick up and stand up for the people in your blocking group, and you collaborate, then you're going to do very well. So I just got another question. Does it affect your award if your block's resolution does not pass? So the answer again is no. So the winning block isn't guaranteed the best delegate awards or the outstanding delegates. So I just saw another question about, or another comment that says it's the journey that matters. And that's exactly right. So the end result might not turn out in your favor, but that's okay. As long as you put a lot of work into the path you take to creating that resolution, you try to build a collaborative environment and maybe even consensus among your group and among the committee, then you'll do just fine. And if your resolution doesn't pass in the end, that's okay. That's not going to impact our opinion of you or your performance in the committee. Okay, so are there any other questions? I've got a couple more minutes, so if there's any more last minute questions, I'll wait a couple more minutes. But otherwise, I had a really good time doing this. I hope this was helpful, and I'd appreciate any feedback too. If there's anything I can do to improve upon my presentation for next time, or if there's still any questions that I haven't answered, please let me know. But otherwise, it doesn't look like there's any more questions at the moment. You can reach me on my email at unep@hmunindia.org if you have any other questions beyond this webinar. Are there any verbal mentions at Harvard MUN? Yes. It varies by committee. So there might be, some committees might decide not to award verbals while others will. So it really depends on committee, but yes, we do allow verbals, verbal commendations or verbal mentions. Yeah, so I've gotten, looks like there's some nice comments in the section too. That was a nice summary of the presentation too by one of our commenters. Okay, I got another question about the HMUN ROP webinar. I'm not sure how to access that. I will email the secretariat after this video and see if we can get that up. But we'll definitely have that up before conference. So I'll look into that. So otherwise, that's all the time I have for today. So again, if you want to email me, shoot me a message at unep@hmunindia.org. I had a really good time doing this. I hope you all liked the presentation. I look forward to seeing some of you, hopefully all of you at conference. and I wish you the best with your Model UN career through Harvard and at your other conferences. So thank you all so much, and best of luck with your journeys.